There were a series of kings in Israel. And these kings ruled over Israel. The kings ruled over Israel the whole duration of the first temple. The first temple stood for 410 years. There were kings of Israel, or more exactly, these were called the kings of Yehuda. Israel was were the 10 tribes. There was a split immediately after King Solomon died, as there was a split in the kingdom, and 10 tribes made a separate kingdom of their own, and that was called Yisrael. And the lower tribes was called, or sometimes it's called Ephraim. And the lower tribes, the bottom two, which was Yehuda, Judah, and Benjamin, which that's where the Holy Temple was in the area of Judah and Benjamin, as that was the tribes of Judah. Those are the tribes. So in the bottom part of Israel, they had their king. And the top part of Israel were the 10 tribes, where they also had their king. But let's say for our purposes, we're not interested in the top part. We're interested only in the kings that came from King David. Now there's a law that says that all of the kings have to come from King David. They have to come directly from him until the final Jewish king, who will be Mashiach. The Mashiach will be a king, Melech HaMashiach, the king Mashiach. Mashiach will be the final king in the line of King David. Now ask yourself a question: what do the Jewish people need a king for? I mean, that's obsolete. Kings? Who needs kings anymore? Kings? Who has a king? That's not good. Democracy is good. Democracy is good. Maybe socialism is good. Maybe some. But what type of a thing is a king? A king just tells everybody what to do. A king lords it over everybody. Where's the freedom of the individual? He says no. The Jewish people, in fact, the whole world needs a king. Why? Because people, on their own, they become very selfish. And they can even interpret their selfishness to be altruistic and spiritual and based on principles and ideas. But really it's tremendously selfish. Which that's the basic problem with like communism and all these things, is they're wonderful ideas. But without a true Jewish king, in the end everybody just becomes a big selfish, the whole world becomes a big selfish thing. Everybody just, and exactly the opposite. That becomes the goal. The goal becomes the freedom of the individual to be as selfish as possible without hurting anybody. That's like an ideal of like to be as selfish as you can, get as much pleasure as you can without hurting anyone. That's like the main principle of the world now. Says the Torah, no, it's not so. It's not so. Exactly the opposite. The more that you're thinking about yourself, the more unsatisfied you're going to be. The more that a person is selfish, the more unfulfilled and meaningless is his life going to be. Why? Because if a person is only thinking about himself, so it ends up that he's the measure of everything. So what's he measured against? Against what? What's he measured against? What's his meaning? Right? There's no meaning. You can only have meaning if you measure yourself against something else, right? Or if you don't measure yourself at all. That's even better. So it says that's the job of a king. The job of a king is to get people thinking about the Creator and how they are being created every instant from nothing, and everyone to feel the Creator, and even deeper to feel that they can repay the Creator. That's the job of a king. So a king, says the Rebbe, has two jobs. One job is to make everybody more and more aware of the Creator of the universe. And the other job is to there should be law and order. Law and order in the world. Yeah, I have a king. The king can make order in the world. That people don't kill each other, people don't steal, people don't rob. So says the Rebbe, this is the job of a king. And ideally, all of the Jewish people can be at the level where they don't really need a king. That they're just picking a king because it's a commandment to pick a king. But ideally, they can be at a level where they don't really need a king. Says the Rebbe, they don't really need a king except for one type of a king that everybody needs. And that's a king like King David. King David was different than all the other kings. King David was totally different from all the other kings. And the Melech HaMashiach, the Messiah, was going to be totally different also, just like King David. What?
The Mashiach
But all the kings had to come from King David. But King David had a special quality that none of the other kings had, including the greatest of the kings, King Solomon and Chezkiyahu Melech, that they thought he might be Mashiach. But King David had a quality that none of these other kings had. None of the other kings had. What is this quality that King David had that nobody else had? And only the Melech Mashiach is going to have? King David had the ability to reveal godliness in every detail of the creation. To reveal godliness in every detail, the most minor details of life. In fact, exactly the opposite. There's a saying that God is found in details. General ideas and philosophies, it ends up that what are the details? The details are me, what I think. What's really important to me is what I think. But, there's also ideas and general things. It says that's the idea of David HaMelech. David HaMelech was totally different than everybody else, and the Rebbe puts this in sort of Kabbalistic terms. So let's look and see. Okay, the first word in the line is brachot. See, it has a parenthesis there. See, there's the line, it has a parenthesis. It is about 12 lines from the bottom of the page, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 lines from the bottom of the page. See, it's in the parentheses there? Lachu upashtu yedechem megadu. Okay. Are you cold? Is it cold? The hine. Right after the period. After the period. See, there's a period? Oh. The hine. Behold. Now I'm saying, in the beginning, you might not understand anything, especially words without any vowels, but believe me, in a short time, you'll be able to read just like I do. Better. Hopefully better. Hine, behold. So what we said before. King David had something that none of the others had. He had this level of chachma. He had the level of chachma. What's the level of chachma? Chachma is the level of surrender, total surrender to the Creator of the universe. Total surrender to the Creator of the universe. Now you have to understand, what does it mean, total surrender to the Creator of the universe? What does this mean, total surrender to the Creator of the universe? Let me give you maybe a simple example. You have Albert Einstein, right? Albert Einstein came up with a theory of relativity. What is this theory of relativity? The theory of relativity, if it's right, if it's really right, so what essentially did Einstein do? He just tapped into a truth. He didn't really invent anything. He just somehow or other realized this true principle. Right? In other words, what is he? He was surrendered to the truth. He was open to the truth. Like you have a television set. When does a television set work? When the television set works, you can see the program on it. You don't look at the television anymore. You don't watch the television. You watch the program on it. As soon as the television doesn't work, what do you see? You see television. You see the television. You don't see the program. I tell you, it's all fuzzy. The television looks like this. Maybe it's the bulbs. Maybe it's the screen. Maybe it's the something. In other words, you're thinking about the television itself. The same thing. A person, when he's negated to something else, means that you don't see the person. What do you see? You see the program. In other words, Einstein, there's a million physicists, they have wonderful ideas. If their ideas are wrong, then all you see is the person. Right? This is his idea. You see, the theory of relativity, that's right. Right? You don't, every time you use it, you don't say, this is Einstein's theory. This is the theory of relativity. He revealed something true. Right? Isaac Newton revealed certain principles of reality. He didn't make these up. He just realized what they were. He just saw the truth. Like he saw the truth that this is the way things work. He saw the truth. What about a person? Can a person see what's the truth? How you're supposed to act? How you're supposed to feel? Is there such a thing as a truth? And so we say, yes, there is a truth. There is a truth. First of all, there's general truths. You're not supposed to kill. You're not supposed to steal. And then there's also in each and every situation how you apply these truths. Each and every situation. And if you are batal, if you are negated to God, then you see the truth in everything. And even more truths come through you. More truths come to you. But you say, hey, you lost your individuality. You lost your personality. What about me? He says, that's the real you. That's the real you. right? You see a good pianist that he plays, right? Pianist, oh, this is amazing. What is he doing? He's just playing exactly what the music is there, and the feeling comes through him of the music, right? Oh, this is how the music should be played. He says, what do you mean that this is audio? He's the guy, why can't he play once in a while his own notes? Let him play the way he wants to, right? Let him mess up once in a while. That's what I want to do. He puts a couple of fifths in there, a couple of sevenths, a couple of jazz chords over there. Why? He says, hey, that's not Chopin. That's not Tchaikovsky. What are you doing? You can't do that. He says, no, that's me. Get him off the stage, right? You want to go play in bars or something, but not in the Rubinstein championships, piano championships. You can't, right? You have to play. You have to be. That's called surrender. That's called surrender. Here, being surrendered to God means that a person feels all the time the truth. Feels the truth all the time. And that was the greatness that's why we say in our prayers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, because they were people that were surrendered to the truth. And you looked at them, you see it's possible for a human being to be surrendered constantly to the God who's creating him. God is creating us. Can't be anything more obvious and more close to us than God being creating us. Here we are. We're here together. It's a pretty big favor. Somebody creates you. There's no such thing like that, though. God is infinitely close to us. He's closer to us than we are to ourselves. God is creating us. For a person to feel this all the time, he wants to know, well, what should I do? Now start to learn the Torah. You learn the Torah, and then you start to know how you can repay God, how you can feel the truth is not just that God creates you, why he creates you. And that was King David. King David had this thing of surrender to God, and he could give it to everybody. That's called Chachma. The last word of Chachma, that's surrender to God. In Chassidut, it's also called faith. In English, it's translated as wisdom, but you see how the word is misleading a little bit. Okay, let's go. Hine, behold. You with me, Moshe?
Yes.
First word in line is with the parentheses there. You have it? Mm-hmm. Hine, behold. Bechinat. This category. Chachma. Of Chachma. Shebe, which is in. Midat, the aspect. Maybe if you write down the words, Moshe, it will help. You'll be able to translate it afterwards. What do you say? Is there enough room to do it between the words or not?
No, I can write it.
Okay, but then you won't know which word to go to.
What did you say again?
Okay, but after the period, good? Vehine, behold. See the Bechina, the level. Chachma, of Chachma. What do we say Chachma is? Translated wisdom, translated surrender. Shebemirat, which is in the aspect of Malchut, of God's kingship, which King David was just a representative of God's kingship. It was a branch of God's kingship. Haya was Be, what's this abbreviation? What do you say?
David Melech, Allah Hashem.
Excellent. Ben David, Be in, this is an abbreviation. David HaMelech, King David, Allah Shalom, upon him be peace. Masha Inkim, which is not the case. Bekal in all. Hamalachim, the kings, Sha'acharav, that are after him. All the other kings that were after King David, Hagam, even though, Shahayu, that they were, Tzadikim, you know what tzadikim means, right? Righteous. Gadolim, even though they were big, righteous people. V'chachamim, and wise. Ma'od, very much. Shahari, because behold, Bishlomo, in King Solomon, Ne'emar, it says, quote, Vayechakem, that he was wiser, he was more wise, Mikol Adam, than any man. So it says in the book of Kings, first book, Pekain Chizkiyahu, and also the King Chizkiyahu. King Chizkiyahu, he was a candidate to be the Mashiach. They were tremendously great, incredibly great. They were greater than any other Jew at the time. But nevertheless, they were not the level of King David. Why not? Shelo, that not, haya, was, there was not, ha'arat, the ray, a shining, chachma of this level of total surrender. Chachma means total surrender, milamayla, from above. Me'ir, shine, bohem, in them. This level of chachma did not shine in them, the inyan, regarding hanhagat, the leading, the conduct, malchutam, of their kingdom. Al derech, like hanal, we mentioned before, beDavid, in David. Period. King David had the ability to put godliness, the surrender, into everything. And none of the other kings after him had this ability. Hagam, even though, shahayu, that they were, that all these kings were, chachamim, even though they were very wise men, but that was hainu, namely, benitzutz, in the spark, haprati, individual, shalahem, of them. In other words, personally, in their own personality, they had this level of total surrender to God. But they weren't the level of King David, that they could put it in other people also, that they could put it in every detail of their rulership. They were a king. They were kings. They were holy kings. They were good kings. They were wonderful kings, but they did not have the ability to give this feeling of godliness in everything that they did and every one that they spoke.
There were some sparks. They had the sparks,
Right.
but
They had this.
not the entire.
That's right. Not the entire. They couldn't really give it over. Shabo, that in them, heiru, there shined, maybe chinat chachma, from the level of chachma. What does it mean? That in their personal lives, these kings were very great people, and it affected them. Their greatness, their devotion to a God, it affected them, yes, but it didn't shine directly into everything they did. It didn't shine directly into everything they did. Let me take you an example. Maybe an example, I don't know if it's a good example, in the normal, regular physical world. Here you have, let's see, what would be a good example? We'll keep taking this example of Einstein. Let's say Einstein is the ultimate wise person. Then there's people who are pupils of Einstein. Right? They're pupils of Einstein. These people are pupils. So does it mean that Einstein had a tremendous influence on them, but they still are not the level of Einstein? It doesn't really shine in them, this wisdom. Right? They have their own little wisdom of their own. Of course, they're physicists. They're very great people. And they were also pupils of Einstein, so Einstein had an effect on them. But as far as physics goes, they're not at his level. The same thing, we have to say lahavdil, to make a separation with King David and the kings that came after him. King David was totally surrendered to God. And everything that he did, said, and even thought, and every direction that he gave in his whole kingdom was pure godliness, which is not the case the other kings after him. The other kings after him, they were very godly people, and their whole being was influenced totally by God. And everything they did was influenced by God, but it wasn't pure godliness.
Moshe Rabbeinu was not a king?
In this sense of the word, he was not a king. No. Moshe Rabbeinu was not a king. Even though it says, Vayihi Yeshua Melech, even though it says that there was a king, that Moshe in a way was a king. Yes, it's true. Moshe in a way was a king. He led the Jewish people. He did. But Moshe was very unusual. Moshe was a whole total unusual thing. If we can say, in a way, Moshe was more like the high priest, the prophet. He was something like the Samuel was. Moshe was the great prophet. He was but you're right. Moses had the job of being a king also. But the kingship was not passed through Moshe. No. But King David, yes, King David was totally negated to God. In some ways, Moshe gave something to the Jewish people that no one gave. No one gave. Moshe gave a certain level of faith to all the Jewish people.
Humility.
Faith. No. I don't know if humbleness. Moshe himself was humble. Moshe himself was humble. It says he was more humble than anybody else. But the true example usually that's given of humility is King David. In a Chassidut, King David said, I am a worm, I am not a person, I am an animal. They said, Ani tolat velo ish, behemos ha'isi moch. David Melech said that he was like an animal, he was like a this. In a way, King David, he was the idea of a kingship, because do you know what the 10 sfirot are? You learn this thing of the 10 sfirot. So the lowest of the 10, right, so the top one is Chachma. Chachma being a dad. Chesed. The lowest of the 10 sfirot is Malchus. What is this level of Malchut, of God's Malchut? Malchut is nothing of its own. It just receives from what's above. Right? But why? Why is it action? Because it receives from everything that's above, and everything that's above it is pure life. So
David was Malchut.
That's right. So David was the true aspect of Malchus. What's Malchus? That he has nothing of his own. Everything that he has is from above. So he doesn't do anything, he doesn't say anything, he doesn't think anything, he doesn't feel anything, except for what God wants him to. But on the other hand, you see what happens to a person when he does this? What happens to a type of person that he feels godliness all the time? You figure that type of person just sits there all day and goes like that? Not. King David, there was never a minute that he was still. King David was always working for a God. He was always working. He was a king. He had all the problems of the country on his shoulders. He had to make split-second decisions all the time, and the most trivial and meaningless issues he had to decide. Right?
King David wrote the Tehillim.
King David wrote Tehillim, yes. And you see in the Tehillim how much trouble the King David had. The whole Tehillim is just filled with King David's troubles. He had enemies from all sides. Everybody hated him, King David. He was not accepted by almost anybody. There was one time when he was dethroned by his own son. But Absalom had David usurped. What was it? Let's go. So we see that King David was unusual. What was King David's unusualness? That he not just was influenced by this level of chachma, which chachma is surrender to God. No, that it was shining through him in every detail of the kingdom. Every single detail. That's like God. We see, what does God do? God creates every little bug and every little atom and every little molecule. God is creating everything all the time, every second. And that's just not just in this world, and all the planets and all the angels and all the tremendous details that there are in the world. God creates every single detail, every single instant. And nothing is exactly similar to anything else. Everything is a little bit different than anything else. If nothing else, just in place, everything is different. This is the aspect of God. This is God's kingship. This is King David's kingship. So every single thing, every single tiniest detail, King David was, I don't mean King David didn't deal with every molecule, but everything that was relevant to his kingship. Right? Masha'ain came, which is not Bishar Amalachim, which all the other kings. Okay, that's where we are, right?
In the parentheses.
Oh, yeah. Where's that? Here it goes. Lahavin. That in King David was shining this level of chachma. See the parentheses there? You have it? Moshe.
Yeah.
Lahavin, to understand. Ulahaskil, and to conceive. Betorat Hashem, in the Torah of God. Ubekol Asher, and everything that there is be'olam, in the world. That was the level of King David. Everything he knew what to do. He knew what God wanted. But in this level of kingship, Shelahem, of the other kings, Bima, in that, Shehem, that they are, Malachim, kings, Ala'am, on the people, Bezeh, and this, Lo He'ira, did not shine, Bechinat HaChachma, there did not shine the level of Chachma, of the surrender to God, Al Derech Hanal, like we said about King David, namely in every little detail. The other kings were kings in a general way, but not in every detail like King David. Ella, only David. This shined only in David, that David could bring this level of surrender, of godliness, into every little detail. Why? Lioto, because he was neshama klalit, a general soul. General soul. He was an encompassing soul. He included everything. Masha'in came, which is not the case. Bashar and the other Malachim kings. She'inyan, that the way, Malchutam, in this case the word Inyan means the way, Malchutam of their rulership, Lo Haya was not, Ella except, in other words, it was only Al in the way, Al Ofen, in the manner. This is an abbreviation, Shenidba'er Le'el, that was explained before Parak Aleph in the first paragraph that we learned a few days ago. Shekal, all the other kings were, like we said, on what normal king is supposed to be. What's a regular king? Shekal, that all of the people, Betelim, are surrendered etzlo, to him, to the king. Vahu, and he personally, Batal, is surrendered the lukus to God. Vahu bechinat, and this is just the level of Asya, this is just the outside level to Malchut David, of the kingship of David. This is just the outside level of kingship. Let me give you an example here. Let me give you an example. A person that knows how to speak, public speaker, fantastic public speaker, Frenchman. He stands up and he speaks, best speaker in the world. In France, nobody better than him. He stands and he speaks in front of the crowd, and everybody just goes berserk on this guy. No. After that, he feels sick, or there has to be another. Who are we going to make for a leader? Who's going to be a leader? Nobody. They don't know who's going to be a leader. There's somebody who is also a good speaker, but he only speaks English, doesn't understand the word of French. So what does he do? He teaches them how to say the words. Just teaches them how to say the words. So he gets up and he says, he doesn't understand a word they're saying. With the emotions, he teaches them everything what he's supposed to do. He watches movies of this other guy. He sees how he speaks, how his eyes look. There's people who are actors, they're good actors. And the crowd goes berserk, they're going wild. But what? It's not really genuine. His desire is genuine. He wants to be a good leader, and he wants to lead the crowd, and he wants to do good things. It's wonderful. Just like the first person, no less. But the fact of the matter is it's really not coming. What he's saying, he doesn't even know what he's saying. He's just doing, right? The general feeling that he wants to be a good ruler is there. And his sincerity is there. And everything is there. But what the fact is that he's just going through the actions. He's not really, as a result, it's not as convincing as the first guy. The same thing with King David. King David, he was genuine. He was pure godliness in everything that he did. The kings that came after him, they weren't as genuine. They couldn't put godliness into it. But they knew what to do. They knew what to do. Because they knew how to do the actions, how to be this, because they were genuine people. And they personally were devoted to God. But they couldn't really bring this devotion. They didn't have the language, if you want to say. They didn't have the really ability to bring it to the people. So what did they do? They went through the actions. They did the actions. So that's what's called Malchus of King David. That's the outside level of King David. They were able to do the outside level of King David, namely his rulership, they were able to do. So all the other kings we learned in the first paragraph, they personally were surrendered to God. And because of their surrender, as the people were surrendered to them, and that's what led to, which is not the case of King David. King David was able to make the people surrendered directly to God, to feel godliness directly, if they would have wanted to. Are you cold?
No.
Obir Adavar. Now we're going to explain. Okay, now we're going to explain. I'm telling you that it's not going to be easy to understand. It'll take you a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then you're going to click in. It'll see you. Obir Adavar. an explanation of this thing, be'inyan, in the topic of Malchut David. Let's now explain why King David was different from other kings. Let's explain it a little bit. We explained it a little bit, but let's explain it more deeply. More deeply. Shahaya Bo. Okay, let's go. Biur, the explanation. See where you have the place? You have the place. 5 lines from the bottom after the period. 5 lines from the bottom after the period. First word in the line is Vahu. No. Vahu. See, the first word in the line is Vahu. You have it? Are you on the same page? Yeah. No, not there. Put on the first word of the line. First word in the line is Vahu. First word. 5 lines. Oh. Vahu, Bechinet, Asya, the Malchut, David. Okay, period. Biur. Ubiur, an explanation. Hadavar, of this idea. Be'inyan, of the topic. Malchut, the kingship. David, of King David. Shahaya, that there was. Bo, in him. Gam, also. Mibechinet, from the level of Chachma, this highest level, this level of surrender, the highest of the 10 Sfirot, this level of surrender to God, B'malchuto, this came through all of his kingship. That's what we just said before. Okay, you want to understand this? Listen to this. Hine, behold, Yuvan will be understood. Al-pi, according to. Hakdama, a foreword. I'm going to want to prepare you first of all. Lahavin, to understand, Mamar Razal, the words of the rabbis. Mamar means the words. Razal, of the rabbis. Zal means Zachrin Levracha, of blessed memory. Yalchut Shemoni. So listen to this. Adam Arishon, the first man, Natan gave LaDavid, to King David, Ayin Shana, 70 years, Mishalo, of his life. Kisher, when did Adam give David years of his life? I mean, David lived way after Adam. When did King David live? King David lived at like 2,800 years, something like that, after. How could David get life from Adam? David lived like 2,000 years after, 2,800 years after Adam. How did they meet? We'll see. It's something more than Gilgal Neshama. You'll see.